And moving into the London street now, let's bring in Juliana Olayinka. Good morning, Juliana. Well, the UK Chancellor has told airlines to find all the forms of funding and not turn first to the government for help getting through this coronavirus crisis. Why and how are the airlines taking this? All right, we seem to be having issues there getting through to Juliana. We'll get her as soon as possible. Let's look at the global oil market as prices extend gains for a third session today, rising alongside broader financial markets and hopes Washington will soon approve a massive aid package to stem the economic impact of the coronavirus pandemic. The U.S. crude touched a high of $25.24 a barrel early in the session and was at $24.82 a barrel, up 81 cents. Brent crude was trading up 75 cents at $27.90 a barrel after rising to a high of $28.29. The U.S. Congress may vote on Wednesday on the $2 trillion stimulus after Republicans and Democrats said they were close to a deal, with optimism over the package fueling a surge in stock markets. Still, demand for oil products, especially jet fuel, is falling worldwide as more governments announced nationwide lockdowns to curb the spread of the coronavirus, putting the lead on oil price gains. The market is also facing the threat of increased supplies after the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and other producers, including Russia, failed to extend an agreement to cut production and support prices beyond end of March. In the meantime, the International Monetary Fund predicts the global economy will slide into a recession that is at least as bad as during the global financial crisis or worse this year on the back of the coronavirus pandemic. The managing director, IMF, Kristalina Georgieva, says many emerging markets and low-income countries are already facing significant challenges. She maintains that the human costs of the coronavirus pandemic are already immeasurable and all countries need to work together to protect people and limit the economic damage. In her words, this is a moment for solidarity. Okay, let's look at what happened at the equities market yesterday. Of course, trading will, of course, be done remotely starting from today. Let's talk to Temple. Temple, I'm right.
Yes, Chimeze, thanks a great deal for joining us here. Fine. We're going to be starting the remote trading today. A lot of the dealers and, of course, traders generally in the stock market will commence all of that today. And if you look at the trading portal of the Nigerian Stock Exchange right about now, we're seeing some transactions, kicking off on that side. Of course, we know that there are some traders that are not able to do this because they haven't been able to key into that segment of the market, but they're not as much as those that have actually started doing this. However, there's a leeway for them to actually move closer to those that have it and see how they can basically carry out their transactions. Meantime, let us quickly look at how the market settled for yesterday's equities and focus. We know that we actually saw a bit of appreciation yesterday, 0.19%. That's some 19 basis points increase in the key benchmark indices to 21,000 after we had dropped from 22,000 psychological position to this level. And we see we had the equity capitalization remained around 11.32 trillion naira. But we know that yesterday alone, we had some performance in the market. If you look at the market breadth was quite positive. So we had some 19 gainers as opposed to some 10 losers in the market. Nigeria Police Microfinance Bank actually was the top gainer yesterday, added some good 10% to its share price because, again, they had announced their close period and we're seeing investors trying to take some position on that particular counter. But if you look at the losers chart, which is led by one of the key companies there, Keverton, which is an oil and gas firm, was actually down the most yesterday. In the last 7 sessions, we know that Keverton has done well, gaining some 20%. But we now see yesterday it dropped by 10% and eventually impacted the share price of that particular company, which now dropped to 2 naira 25 kobo thereabouts. And we know that now the year-to-date performance of this particular company has now worsened from 6% to 15.73%. 3%. But we'll continue to track and see what becomes of Keverton, given the fact that it has actually recorded some gains before now, and we're now seeing it dragging. If you look at the sectoral performances, eventually the banking stocks was negative, 0.33% for that, because again, we saw some losses on a couple of banks that we have in that segment of the market, that even though we saw some banks, making some gains, like Stanbic IBTC recorded some gains yesterday, but that was not enough to actually push up the indices of the banking segment. For consumer goods segment, we're seeing 24 basis points decline. That's because NASCON was not as impressive as investors expected it in its earnings, which was submitted to the market. And of course, Cadbury is nowhere to go for quite a number of investors yesterday. These are the two key companies that dragged the performance of the consumer goods sector of the market. Industrial goods segment, we know that chemical and allied products was good yesterday, and that was how we were able to arrive at these marginal gains that we've seen. Insurance segment of the market continued to do good, was at 12 basis points up yesterday, and we know that WAPIC Insurance and of course Linkage Assurance were the two key companies that were able to drive up the performance of this particular sector. Quite a number of other insurance firms actually declined yesterday, but thanks to WAPIC and Linkage Assurance, which were up by more than 4% apiece, they were the ones that pushed up this segment. For the oil and gas, that was up by some 25 basis points, of course, because we know that O&O was looking good, and that takes us to the energy segment of the market. If you look at the movements we've seen, corn oil was down by about 10%. Dover, which used to be Forte Oil PLC, had no change. 11 PLC, that is set to delist from the Nigerian Stock Exchange, also had no change. MRS remained intact, but O&O was the only stock which is up by some 6.97%, and we saw about 1 million units of its shares, traded. If you look at other sectors of the market, other energy stocks that we actually track, none of them actually made any positive move. For the NASD O2C, we know that was unchanged yesterday. Basically, the equity capitalization, or market capitalization, I should say, will remain at 507.57 billion naira. If we look at the volume, value, and transaction, it was all 50,500, and this particular figure you see actually was on the Nigeria NDEP stock yesterday. Some investor actually put just 15 million naira on that particular stock. Niger Delta Development, Niger Delta Exploration Production Company, and we're able to arrive at this figure. That was the only transaction that we saw on that side of the market yesterday, 14.8 million naira. But when you take out the various transaction costs and charges, it drops all the way from 15 million to what you then have here. And all of those deals took place on this particular company alone. For the fixed income side of the market, yes, we know that a lot of investors have continued to prepare for the DMO bond auction that will be coming out today, even though it's really, really low. 50 billion naira is what is expected to be offered by the Debt Management Office. But we also know that yesterday, quite a number of investors we're waiting for the outcome of the CBN MPC meeting, and of course, there was basically no change there. But we know that over the bonds segment of the market, in terms of transaction, there wasn't too much. It was a calm space yesterday. We know that the 3rd of February 2020 security, which is at the mid-end of the curve, had a little bit of interest from investors, but it was more of the short to the medium end of the curve that investors actually indicated interest. For this particular security, it was at 104 naira low, but then it jumped to 106 naira 4 kobo after we saw a bit of demand there. And if you look at the 2022 and 2023 papers, these are the two key areas that investors actually, placed a bit of interest, and we saw yields a little bit contracting on the side of the markets yesterday. For the NCB space, there's basically not so much interest. A lot of the local players are not, keen about this segment of the market at this point in time, and that's why we have just 2 securities out of the numerous securities available on that space. Basically, here we see 2.5% discounted. Then you have the 14th of May 2020 discounted at 4%, and in total, we had just 3 deals yesterday. For the OMO side of the market, we see a lot of traction. Investors continue to play well with the FPI to continue to bring out the offer. Again, those offerings were matching some cool demands from investors, and that's why we arrive at 75 deals at a whopping 179 billion naira. Chimezie.
Well, it's a new trading day, and as we hope to see a bullish run today in the market, let's continue to stay safe, Temple. All right, that's a wrap on the program. Thank you for watching. I'm Chimezie Obi Iwagu.